Selamat datang ke ASM Podcast yang dibawakan khas oleh Akademi Sains Malaysia. Siri podcast ini merupakan platform perkongsian topik-topik berkaitan sains, teknologi, inovasi dan ekonomi STIE secara santai dan mudah difahami. Setiap episod akan menampilkan jaringan pakar ASM yang akan berkongsi pengalaman dan pendapat mereka tentang STIE seiring dengan etos ASM. Budayakan sains, raikan teknologi, cetuskan inovasi.
So I'm delighted to welcome everyone to the Planetary Health Forum, forging commitment and gaining insights for the development of the National Planetary Health Action Plan to drive Malaysia's sustainability. So first of all, thank you to all for taking the time to participate in our forum today, and thank you to all the audience in the virtual space for actually joining us in this important discussion. I also would like to express my gratitude to the moderator, Dr. Bakar, and to all our esteemed panellists for taking the time off their busy schedule to actually enlighten us with their views and on charting the way forward to address planetary health in Malaysia that will in turn affect planetary health globally. So ladies and gentlemen, it can be said that human health is better now than at any other time in history because the life expectancy has soared and death rates among young children have decreased substantially. But these gains in human health have come at a high price. The degradation of nature's ecological systems on a scale never seen in human history. Evidences have shown that the health of humanity is intrinsically linked to the health of the environment, but by its actions, humanity now threatens to destabilize the Earth's key life support system. So we have referred to the report released by the Rockefeller Foundation Lancet Commission on Planetary Health in 2015 that now calls for immediate global action to protect the health of human civilization and the natural systems on which it depends. The report provides the first ever comprehensive examination of evidence showing how the health and well-being of future generation is being jeopardized by the unprecedented degradation of the planet's natural resources and ecological system. The Commission warns that a rising population, unsustainable consumption, and the overuse of natural resources will exacerbate these health challenges in the future. And you know, when that happens, the world's poorest communities will be among those at greatest risk as they live in areas that are most strongly affected and have greater sensitivity to disease and poor health. Now, planetary health is based on the understanding that human health and human civilization depend on flourishing natural systems and its wise stewardship. So wise stewardship here means careful and responsible management of what has been entrusted by God to our care, in this case, the planet Earth. Now today we are witnessing the degradation of natural systems to an extent unprecedented in human history. Our environment is changing and you may have experienced hotter days and more frequent heavy rainfalls nowadays. Not to forget the three major floods at the Central Peninsula, the East Coast, and the flash floods around Klang Valley had caused huge losses to the government as well as to the rakyat. In fact, for the past 40 years, we have experienced alarming proportions of zoonotic diseases as a result of human contact with animals such as Nipah, MERS, and COVID-19. And if we do not do anything about planetary health, we are about to face exponential economic shocks, societal collapse, and environmental degradation. And continued negligence and failure to address planetary health will result not only in mental health, but also in us falling into an even bigger economic shock due to emerging diseases, especially those of zoonotic origins and climate change as a result of floods, air pollution, natural disasters, landslides, and so on and so forth. So it's time, ladies and gentlemen, for us to now understand and act on addressing human health in balance with animal health and environmental health in a transformative manner. And we cannot afford business as usual any longer. So going by the Rockefeller Foundation Lancet Commission, planetary health is the achievement of the highest attainable standard of health, well-being and equity worldwide through judicious attention to the human systems, may it be political, economic, or social, that shape the future of humanity and the Earth's natural systems, that define the safe environmental limits within which humanity can flourish. So this is indeed a tall order looking at where we are today. Now, ASM's Science Outlook 2020 showed a 30-year, this is a slide showing our studies, based on our studies, that showed a 30-year evaluation of our STI ecosystem in Malaysia based on economic, social, and environmental impact. And if we follow the blue line, we find that Malaysia's economic impact has shown progress over the period of 2000 to 2019. Our STI ecosystem, however, have shown progress from 2000 to 2010, but remain stagnant or stalled for about 10 years. That means we have STI, but it's not going very much anywhere in helping to move the agenda of the country, stalled for 10 years. And Malaysia's performance in societal development and environmental sustainability also declined over the years, with the environment suffering the most. This indicates that STI advancement has been harnessed for economic growth, but not as much to address the societal and environmental issues. Realizing how important the health of the planet is, ASM has forwarded a proposal paper to develop a National Planetary Health Action Plan to the National Science Council. On April 8, 2022, the National Science Council decided for MOSTI through Academy of Sciences Malaysia, in collaboration with all the ministries, industry, civil society, non-governmental organizations, to develop a National Planetary Health Action Plan, or NPHAP in short. NPHAP will be driven by science, technology, innovation, and economy. In particular, the NSC, National Science Council, highlighted for industry to be involved in providing relevant inputs for the development of the National Planetary Health Action Plan. So today is a part of a series of many more engagements to get feedback from all parties before we formulate a National Planetary Health Action Plan. So based on previous inputs from stakeholder consultations and key reference materials, 5 focus areas have been identified so far, but that doesn't mean this stops here. So first is environmental crisis that will include climate change, natural resources degradation, ecological limits, biodiversity loss, zoonotic diseases. Second focus area, sustainable food systems, which all now food consumption, redesign of the food production system, and wastage that we are seeing. Third, governance and community empowerment, like social priorities, inclusivity, citizen science, tradition, and indigenous knowledge. Fourth, sustainability leadership and culture, responsive, responsible, and resilient leadership, and of course, education, very important in making sure we all understand about what this is all about. And rethinking solution systems, the RDIS, research, this is the new buzzword now, research, development, innovation, commercialization, and entrepreneurship landscape. R&D ventures, disruptive technologies, green technopreneurship, and alternative energy. All these are focus areas based on previous discussions and engagement. All these focus areas are again open for discussion for further enhancement and refinement based on all of your views. Since the health of humanity is all intrinsically linked to these focus areas, we need to have a transformational idea and action plan to be integrated into, for example, budgets and policies that will then build resilience on human health and the health systems. So besides developing the action plan itself, part of the proposal that was approved by the National Science Council is also for ASM to now develop an integrated monitoring and impact tracking system for planetary health to enable effective implementation of the National Planetary Health Action Plan in the future. Because, we do not want to have evaluation done every 5 years and at the end of the day say, oh, this is what it should be done, and it was just, something that's on paper. What needs to be done now is to track online real time. If something's happening now, it needs to now be dealt with. So this is the tracking system that we are trying to now have developed. Now, development of a national environmental, the second thing, part and parcel of this proposal, is to also develop a national environmental genomic database through the Malaysian Genome and Vaccine Institute, ASM, and the network of collaborations with all other related institutions and agencies. As we have now found out, there's a lot of genomic database located in various ministries and agencies throughout Malaysia. We are all fragmented. Everything is in their own place. Everybody is keeping their own little secret. But at the end of the day, it needs to be gathered together. It needs to be converted to metadata so that now we're going to have artificial intelligence starts to go in and then see what is now happening. We do not want to find out later as what happens with Nipah, right? It's somebody else outside in the United States that tells us Nipah is here and tells us where to find the Nipah. So this is time. I mean, we have got all the intellectuals in this country. I think it's time we control our own destiny. So this is where we got to learn from others, learn, unlearn, relearn, co-learn, but we want to co-create something that can now be done and move the agenda in the country. So while the National Planetary Health Action Plan will kickstart these aspects, the actual development of the impact tracking and environmental genomic database will require dedicated focus and investment at a later stage. Now, the National Planetary Health Action Plan will require participatory model, right, involving inclusive collaboration and extensive consultative sessions. Remember, at the end of the day, we are coming up with a policy and action plan. It would be imperative for experts, for industry practitioners, for policy makers, for decision makers, as well as community representatives to now come together to discuss and put forward practical solutions that can be done. And that's why I was thinking more towards transformation within reach. I know we can't change things overnight, but at least let's strive for transformation that is within reach. And we start to go through this by stages. So this is what we hope to lead to perhaps people-centric, nature-based, and values-driven National Planetary Health Action Plan. Because at the end of the day, it's all about values itself. If we now are the individuals that's going to be able to now realize that it's very important, our action is very important, it's all based on values. And values also include here spiritual values. And I think a lot of us also can understand where this is all coming from. So, ladies and gentlemen, before I end, on behalf of the Academy, I would like to take this opportunity to convey our sincerest appreciation to all of you for your commitments and support for this engagement. As Malaysia progresses towards a developed nation status, we must ensure that the nation's prosperity is built on balanced economic development coupled with social equity and inclusion without compromising sustainability. Because as far as we are concerned, no one should be left behind. So we realize that words alone are not enough to make this happen. We need transformative and impactful actions, and this is what we hope to put forward through the National Planetary Health Action Plan. So ladies and gentlemen, just to explain a little bit, it is our honor to actually have Dr. Albert S. van Jaarsveld, the Director General of the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis. This is located in Vienna, and he's giving his keynote on planetary health and Southeast Asia, a systems analyst perspective. This is done with artificial intelligence. They have done all this, how all the factors involving in planetary health can be connected, can be analyzed. They have done this for the world. They are now zooming into Malaysia. So that, they can produce a predictive analysis of what will happen in Malaysia if we don't take care about what is the situation. They can actually focus. If climate change we don't take care, environment we don't take care, population statistics we don't take care, all this, how does it affect the ecosystem in Malaysia? So that is something that IASA can actually now do. So he's located in Vienna. He's asleep now. He'll be awake at 6 a.m. Vienna, which is 12 o'clock today. So we have recorded his speech. He will be giving his speech, but he will join us for discussion at 12 today, together with all the other panelists. So his presentation will highlight the integrated assessment of work conducted at IASA, in particular case studies illustrating the IASA energy and climate, air quality, land use, water and food security, biodiversity, human demographic, educational and well-being, including inequality assessment. Because as far as we are concerned, all these are integrated. So you need to have a new way of analysing what is going to happen, and not individual way. So this is why we engage with EASA, so that our fellows can also learn, and our young scientist network can also learn about this technology and be able to now use it for other things that we need to do in the country. So we will engage EASA basically as a knowledge partner in developing the National Planetary Health Action Plan. So we look forward to learning and applying the way EASA analyzes the compound uncertainties and the subsequent development of scenarios and pathways for a sustainable future. So I also would like to thank Professor Dr. Insinyur Dr. Bakar Jaafar, our moderator, and our esteemed panellists, Dr. Azman Ismail from PLUS, Professor Tan Sri Jamilah Mahmud from Sunway, I think so, no need for further introduction. Professor Emerita Datuk Dr. Rashidah Shuaib, definitely from the gender perspective, and Mr. Q Jia Yo for taking time as a legal and also very much into nature, for taking the time to be with us, and look forward to hearing your valuable insights. There is one more chair that is meant for technologists, Dr. K. Nagulandran, our TKSU from MOSTI, but unfortunately, I mean, he is a very enthusiastic on this nature thingy and planetary health. He is our champion, but unfortunately, due to family bereavement, he cannot be with us today. But we will definitely get his views at other engagement sessions. There'll be more, inshallah. So to all members of the audience, please make the best of the opportunity to ask questions and actively engage with the panelists. As you know, it's not easy to get all of them in one platform in one day at one session. So given being with their busy schedule and commitments. So last but not least, thank you to ASM management team, right, in organizing this forum. And once again, thank you to all of you for making time to participate in this session. Sekian wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Berbahagia Professor Emerita Datuk Dr. Asma Ismail for the introductory remarks. Today, we are pleased to have a stellar lineup for our panel discussion. This session will be moderated by Professor Dr. Dr. Bakar Jaafar, FAAC, Vice President, Academy of Sciences Malaysia, and the invited panelists are Dr. Azman Ismail, Managing Director, PLUS Malaysia Berhad, Professor Tan Sri Dr. Jamilah Mahmud, Director, Sunway Centre for Planetary Health, Professor Emerita Datuk Dr. Rashidah Shuaib, former Director of the Centre for Research on Women and Gender, KANITA, and the Honorary Professor, Interdisciplinary Health Sciences Unit, School of Health Sciences, University of Science Malaysia, USM, and Mr. Q Jayao, Co-Chair, Malaysian CSO SDG Alliance, Partner Q&Co. We invite moderator and panelists to the stage. I now hand the floor to Professor Dato' IR Dr. Bakar Jaafar to moderate the panel discussion. Please, Dato'.
Terima kasih, MC. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Selamat pagi. Good morning, Dato' President, fellows, distinguished fellows, colleagues, distinguished panelists, young scientists, top research scientists, and ladies and gentlemen. I have the honor and pleasure to moderate this forum, and thanks to Dr. Asma for having presented essentially the background to our subject and our forum this morning, so I don't have to repeat what has been presented. Very clear. And also, we are very clear about the definition posted on the screen just now on planetary health. But personally, I would like to relate to the subject. Essentially, we're talking about individual health, well-being, public health, the state of the environment, and also the global commons. That will also include the stratosphere and atmosphere and all the oceans, including areas beyond national jurisdiction, and how they are all interlinked. So I would like to introduce, has already been introduced by Dr. Asma, but I will repeat the order of presentation. Our first panelist will be Dr. Azman Ismail, Managing Director, Plus Malaysia Berhad. Our second panelist, Professor Tan Sri Dr. Jamila Mahmud, Director, Sunway Center for Planetary Health. Our panelist, third panelist, Professor Emerita Dr. Rashida Shuib. She's a former Director of the Center for Research on Women and Gender, in short, KANITA, and Honorary Professor, Interdisciplinary Health Sciences Unit, School of Health Sciences, University Science Malaysia. And our fourth panelist, Mr. Q Jayo. He's a co-chair, Malaysian Civil Society Organization and Sustainable Development Goal Alliance and partner of law firm Q & Company. Now I would like to introduce our first panelist, Dato' Azman Ismail. He's the Managing Director of Plus Malaysia Berhad since January 2017, sparking the digital revolution within Plus Malaysia Berhad. Dato' Azman has revolutionized the organization through a strong change management program, gaining multiple recognitions not only within Malaysia but also worldwide. Recently, Plus was also the winner of the 2020 and 2021 National Energy Awards in the energy efficiency category for energy management of large building, as well as the runner-up of the ASEAN Energy Awards, making Plus the first highway concession company to receive these dual honors. The double recognition is a direct result of the Plus Green Roadmap, a 5-year strategic plan to preserve the environment utilizing the most innovative approach. So, Dato' Azman, you have 10 minutes for your presentation, and then since you need to go to catch a flight, but we'll give you the opportunity to address at least 2 questions, and also we invite the floor to pose a question. Then we'll continue our forum with the rest of the panelists. Dato' Azman, you have the floor.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So let me just get it right here. Yang berbahagia Professor Emerita Datuk Dr. Asma Ismail, President of the Academy of Science Malaysia, and as well as Professor Datuk Abu Bakar Jaafar, moderator for the today's session. I'm here as the Managing Director of Plus Malaysia Berhad. And I certainly feel very honoured and humbled the fact that Academy Science Malaysia has invited Plus to provide an input towards this very ambitious program that Malaysia wants to progress on. And certainly we are humbled the fact that we're given an opportunity to provide input that certainly can provide big outcome and significant impact towards the planetary health of Malaysia. But importantly, as the panelists, I think the moderator has also given us 5 sets of questions that we're supposed to answer. But I like to do it in a different manner, and I like to be able to tell you a story about what the Plus journey is, because I think it's important to me to set some context to it. Now, we started this journey back in 2018, even before a document called Wawasan Kemakmuran Bersama, or even Rancangan Malaysia ke-12 was ever published by the government. So we started this journey way ahead in that respect. So when we started this journey, ladies and gentlemen, very importantly, we realized that there wasn't any document for us to be guided upon. Hence, what we have done, we become a signatory to United Nations Global Compact and UNDP. And just last month, we submitted our first report of UN Global Compact to New York. And my Chief Sustainability Officer went over to New York to present that document to the United Nations Global Compact. So it's been well received in this perspective. So what I like to be able to do in this particular case is to tell you a story about our journey, and therefore give you a perspective in terms of what we do in line to the UN Global Compact, which is, I'm sure, to some extent also with respect to, it will fit into the planetary health as well. The president of ASM has shared about. Okay, so before that, maybe I give you a bit of context what PLUS is. I think many of you know what the highway is, but importantly to give you the scope. So it is a highway that connects the border of Thailand to Singapore through all these various concession agreements that we have with the government, and therefore we are a very important contributor to the GDP of the economy. Hence, even during the MCO period, everyone else and many of the industries had to close down, not the highway, because it's the essential services, and therefore it provides transportation means for the carrying of goods, services, medical supplies to the various locations. We are owned by two sovereign funds, or maybe one sovereign fund, one provident fund. That is Khazanah and EPF, with 51% belongs to Khazanah and 49% belongs to EPF. Now, okay, so this gives you some perspective of what PLUS is today. And as you can see, we are essentially a consumer of climate change. We have brick and mortar kind of industry. So essentially, as an infrastructure rakyat, as this highway was developed, we cut through hills, we cut through mountains, we displace kampongs and so on and so forth. So we have had some tremendous impact towards our society and our fence line as this highway was built. So therefore, as the realization comes through, ladies and gentlemen, come 2018, we recognize the fact that we now need to think differently in the way how we develop this the country as well as the company. So we put ourselves into a sustainability agenda. So I just want to be able to share with you the next slide. And here is PLUS sustainability agenda. So we have a very strong mission, and our mission is, at PLUS, we connect communities to shape a safe and sustainable future. So this is our mission statement, and this is a statement that we ascribe to in every single aspect that we do. We also recognize the fact that we are infrastructure rakyat, and therefore we play a significant role in driving sustainable practices to the ecosystem. And therefore, what we do, we conduct our business on an environmentally conscious and a socially responsible manner with good governance. So essentially, like I said before, when we started this journey, the Planetary Health agenda wasn't made available. So we use UN Global Compact as our guidance in this perspective. What you see up there are material matters. Under the UN Global Compact, there are 25 material matters. And under the UN, and therefore under UNGC principles, we are focusing ourselves on 4 items, which is environment, human rights, labor, and anti-corruption. So those are things that we look at. But if you look at the matters with respect to 25 material matters, these are all elements that encompasses of the planetary health. So it is there to some extent, maybe not to the extent where we talk about food security, because we are not obviously in that business, but nevertheless, we can certainly make a significant play in that perspective. Here is, we talk about environment, and here is how we adopt green technology in order for us to be able to develop this. So first, we have had this PLUS Green Roadmap 1.0, and essentially we look at things that we can do to ensure that we embedded sustainable practice. And things that we have done, quite easily is embedding LED street lights, or even changing the air conditioning units to environmental friendly gas. So as we do this journey and we embark on this, obviously we also been recognized by winning those 2 awards, the Energy Management for Large Building, as well as the first runner-up of the ASEAN Energy Award for 2020. So these are significant improvements that we have done. But I just want to draw upon if you look at the bottom right, in terms of the significant benefit that we have gained from our roadmap. As of this year, we are still have not completed the year, but as of June this year, we have had a cumulative savings of 30 juta, 30.5 million kilowatt hour savings. The fact that we have been able to convert to using very simple things like LED street lights and changing the aircon unit. So this is significant, and we track that. I think this is where we report out, and this is where it shows that we are contributing significantly. Here is the breakdown. If I look at on the one on the right, here's the breakdown of how we get the 30.5 million kilowatt hour savings. These are things that we are doing in order for us to make that happen. So perhaps the perspective all of you should recognize as what we are doing. Well, ASM talks about the top down, about doing the strategic, strategy and where it has to be integrated. Certainly that's well supported. But here is the perspective where it is a bottoms up, where it is comes in, where we need to do bottoms up and we need to be able to make significant role and significant impact. And here are really, elements where we can actually make it happen. And so people to be able, and we measure ourselves. If you say this is what we want to do, and we make certain effort making sure that this is measurable and it has certainly impact towards the environment. Not forgetting that, we also move towards the next phase, which is EV. And thank you to the government, and we've been very significant player to the EV task force. We are a permanent member of the EV task force being chaired by MITI. And here is essentially where, supporting the low carbon mobility development plan, the green technology master plan, and the 12 Malaysia plan. We recognize that the on-the-move segment, which is the highway segment, is the strong catalyst to ensure higher adoption rate of EV vehicles. So hence, making sure that such EV charging points are available in various sizes and various forms are important for us to be able to, to make that happen. But obviously, EV charging requires investment. Hence, more conversation needs to happen with respect to charge point operators, EV car manufacturers, the government, and so on and so forth, ensuring that the investment, if there's a need and the investment, there has to be an appropriate returns to the investment what we do. Hence, the program that we embark is a program that essentially we make sure there's a purpose behind that as well. I understand time is running out, but I think it's also important for us to share with you some other aspects. Now, very importantly, we talk about very simple solar PV, and I can share with you the fact that we have had 7 of our residence areas are already equipped with solar PVs, to the point of extent that today we are overproducing the power, and we are selling that power to the national grid, and hence we are getting a bit more savings to it. So this is simple steps that we are doing for us to be able to get to green infrastructure in the highway. Now, not forgetting about labor rights. This is perhaps an item where we talk about inclusivity. We talk about making sure no child labor into the way where we operate in our premises and so on and so forth. So we subscribe to these labor rights, and we are doing massive amount of work internally within our own organization as well as with our supplier. Many people perhaps understand what Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 is all about. So making sure that labor rights also are being adopted. I think this is an action that we are currently undertaking, and soon we'll be coming up with the policies about anti-discrimination, anti-bully, and so on and so forth. These are policies that's important, and I think here is an element where labor rights comes into play, and we put it into practices in plus. And what this next slide here is describing about steps that we are doing today for us to be able to develop that human rights policy. It is not a top-down policy, ladies and gentlemen. It is a bottoms-up policy based on engagement that we had with staff, with our suppliers, with our ecosystem, as well as whatever best practices out there in the market. So my last slide here is how do we advance United Nations Sustainability Development Goals in plus. And we talk about here 4 focus areas. We talk about energy management. We talk about air pollution, reducing greenhouse gas emission. We talk about labor rights practices, and we also have governance and ethics, and ensuring we adopt highest level of governance and practice in Malaysia. Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Osman. Now time for me to introduce our second speaker. She needs no introduction, right, to many people, and she's none other than Tan Sri Dr. Jamila Mahmud, medical expert with more than 20 years of expertise in handling health emergencies in disasters and conflict settings, and she is currently the director and professor of Sunway Center for Planetary Health. I understand it's the only center in Asia, if not in the world. Her previous positions include those of Chief of the World Humanitarian Summit Secretariat at the United Nations and Chief of the Humanitarian Response Branch at the United Nations Population Fund, and Under Secretary General for Partnerships at the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, as well as Special Advisor to the Prime Minister of Malaysia on Public Health during the period April 2020 to August 2021. By the way, I met Tan Sri in New York, so she's very well known in New York too. Yeah. So Tan Sri, you have the floor. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dato'. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum. Good morning, everyone. I think for a shortage of time, I'm just going to recognize and acknowledge all our esteemed President of the ASM and my esteemed panelists. So first of all, congratulations. I'd love to do a case study on class. Let's look back at how the 21st century began. And we've seen financial meltdowns, we've seen the climate breakdown, even in Malaysia, COVID lockdown around the world, and also conflict. And these things are all close to us because in some way, anything global affects us at a local level. About a month ago, a very important human development report was produced by the United Nations Development Programme. And this is a regular report that they produce, and it tells us about the state of the world. And you have a human development index of different countries. In the last 2 years, the word Anthropocene has creeped into the Human Development Report. And Anthropocene simply means humans creating the impact and the change, both for good and for bad. And in this year's report, the alarm bells have been sounded many, many times, as you know, from UN Secretary General, who called a code red for humanity with the climate crisis. But what it tells us this year is something very interesting, and it's about complexity and about the uncertainty complex that has arisen. And these come in many different ways. First of all, you have, dangerous planetary changes of the Anthropocene, and I really am so grateful to Academy of Science Malaysia for stepping up to take on this National Planetary Health Agenda and Action Plan, which I've been pushing for a long time through the Climate Action Council and others. The second is the pursuit of sweeping societal transformations, Arab Spring, the protests in Iran now, Bersih, people really wanting to find their voice and their role in society, which is so important, about a people-centric approach to development. The third is widespread, intensifying polarization, not just at the national level, but also at the global level. We've never seen it at these levels before in our human history. Now, all this, of course, is colliding with each other. And of course, some of the uncertainties was anthropocenic driven, was also the pandemic. And every day, people have their own uncertainties to deal with as a result of that. So this uncertainty complex is actually creating a lot of anxiety, depression. People feel helpless, and we cannot have people helpless. We need to rise and we need to find solutions together. So what it requires is this. We've had a great acceleration, growth, economic development, use of resources, environmental damage. All this was part and parcel of a great acceleration because of our hunger to just increase our GDP at the cost of anything. But what we need now is a great transition. And planetary health is a way that we can approach the great transition. How do we learn to do nearly everything differently? What Plus has shown us is that it is still possible to profit while trying to save the planet with your energy transition and so on and so forth. How do we produce and consume food, manufactured products and energy? It is us that's driving the change. During the lockdown, how many of us increased our purchases through Shopee and Lazada? Yeah. And how many layers of plastic does it come wrapped in? Did anyone write to Shopee beside me? Right? We don't have to have that. How do we drive consumer behavior? Right? And how do we manage our natural landscapes and resources? You've done it. I think you tried to plant teak. It didn't quite work. The government announced 40 million trees, but it has to be good quality trees that actually help, and diverse type of trees. What are the stories we tell ourselves about our place in this world? Our relationship to nature, what it means to live a good life. For those who have faith, every faith tells us that to be good people, we have to be good to the environment as well, and to each other. So I really urge you to read this report. So thank you so much, Professor Asma, for laying out what planetary health is, because sometimes it's like an elephant. Someone touches the tail and says that's planetary health. Someone touches the trunk. You have to look at it in total. Bottom line, without health, you have no economy. Without health, you have no social fabric. Without health, you have no gender equality. Without health, you will not have political stability. So health is the center of it, and at the center is human beings. It's us that is driving that change. So if we are going to advance humanity's well-being and equity, this is very important. What I want for myself, I must want for everyone else. And we've seen the ugly head of polarization, of racism, of everything else showing up. Even in Malaysia, I experienced it during COVID, during the vaccination campaign, trying to overcome all these things. Thank God we had good leadership. So I think we can't ignore it now. So whatever you're doing in PLAS or other places adds into the planetary health agenda. Planetary health cannot be done by everyone alone. It requires that multi-stakeholder systemic shift. So I'm going to introduce you, I'm sorry if I repeat this to people who are knowing this well. The fundamental is there are limits to which we can live a safe life. When you're driving, there is a speed limit. When you're eating, there should be a limit on what you eat. Although we are terrible, right? We eat nasi lemak at 3 in the morning. But the planet also has limits. There are limits to which the planet can give humanity a safe place to live. And a bunch of scientists led by Johan Rockström came together and fundamentally looked at what these limits are. What is it that we can measure, that we can tell from the science that will ensure humanity will survive? And these are called the planetary boundaries. I don't have time to elaborate, but if you do have Netflix, I really urge you, this is a must-watch, Breaking Boundaries on Netflix. And Johan tells the story with David Attenborough. So essentially, there are 9 planetary boundaries. In 2015, when the Planetary Health paper came out, the commission from Rockefeller and Lancet came out to push planetary health, these 9 boundaries were fundamental. At the time, maybe about 3 to 4 boundaries were breached. When I came home from Geneva to Malaysia and really determined to set up a planetary health center that is not in the global north, only 4 of the planetary boundaries were breached. When I started talking about this to Ipoh, 5 were breached. And I started talking to Ipoh in January. 2 weeks ago, 6 have been breached. We are living dangerously. We are facing an existential crisis and we're like, kata bawa tu burung. Right? Imagine the last 2 that worries me. Freshwater use, the latest one. The next war will be on water. Right? And I think this is it's a big problem we have to take very seriously. But how many of us, when we take our wudu, we leave our tap running, and you shower, you just shower till, as to your heart's content. It's our behaviors, right? Novel entities, this is the one that terrifies me as a doctor. Microplastics. If I take a sample of all your blood in this room today, 80% of us will have microplastics in our blood. Newborn babies have microplastics in their feces. Why? Because of single-use plastic, which gets to the rivers, gets to the oceans, the fish consume it, we consume the fish. So it's all these things that are adding up. It's our human behavior. So we need to have a new compass for human prosperity. It's not good enough to say we need to ensure that we achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. They are extremely important. They're aspirational. But sustainable goals at whose cost? Yes, Norway, everyone can achieve sustainable goals. But at whose cost? Because whatever they do to pollute impacts Pakistan, which is facing the worst floods ever. This is why they're demanding payment for the crisis that they're having. What we need is a compass that also takes into consideration that ecological planetary boundary, that ecological ceiling. So if you like, the sustainable goals gives us the social floor because you need to develop. Let's not be naive. We need development because people have to have schools and health and water and food. But we need to do it in a way that's different. That great transition is required of us. And it can happen because we are smart enough as human beings to innovate and find new ways so that we can all live in that light green space, which is a safe and just space for humanity. We've been taught this all the while, the yin and yang of life, finding that balance. How do we recalibrate ourselves? So just to show you, Malaysia is not doing very well, right? We don't want to be like Malawi that is not breaching boundaries but has no development, that has no social development. I don't have time, but if you have time to look at the Leeds Good Life Index, Leeds University Good Life Index, you will see every country and you will find that the closest to a donut is Costa Rica. Why? Because Costa Rica government decided a number of years ago to stop destroying the environment. And now their economy is booming and they are one of the happiest places to live in the world. I come back to people. This is Ella. Her mother is Rosamond, who is a teacher in the UK. They live near the South Circular Road, if you know the London South Circular Road, which is a very busy part of getting into the highway. It's also very polluted. From the age of 6, she developed asthma. It got worse and worse. Just after her 9th birthday, she was admitted to intensive care unit at the Great Ormond Hospital in London and died. Her mother, the coroner's report came back that the cause of her death was asthma as a result of toxic air pollution. At the time of her death in London, the air pollution index was extremely high. Her mother took a couple of years, fought the case, went to court, and now is the only person, Ella is the only person who has on her death certificate, the cause of death is air pollution. I'm a medical doctor. I studied public health. Never in my education, and until today, and I graduated in 1986, and I know Prof. Jaffrey is on the line, and right. Medical schools don't teach planetary health. So none of the doctors will ever put air pollution as a cause of death. But, ladies and gentlemen, 8 million people die prematurely because of air pollution. Here we are worried about COVID, but we're not worried about the quality of air that we breathe outside. We come in here, we want to see air filters, we wear masks. But this air pollution is causing lung cancer as well. So even if I don't smoke, I'm still at risk of lung cancer. I'm just giving you a glimpse into health. This is a 1-hour lecture that I normally do. I want to talk about mental health. Last night we had an Eco Courage workshop with students at Sunway University. And what we said is, tell us, what are you anxious about in climate change? And so they revealed to us helplessness. In the West, young people do not want to have children because they cannot see themselves bringing up children on this planet. This is real. the impact of mental health is going to cost billions of dollars when people don't go to work because they're depressed. So everything has an economic value. Taking planetary health seriously will create economic value. We had COVID and we thought, okay, we wash our hands and we wear a mask and we get our vaccination, it'll be fine. We didn't realize, hang on a minute, recession is right behind us as a result. COVID didn't jump out of the blue. It was because we destroyed the environment. We want to eat exotic things. It's our behaviors, right? The climate change is real. It's not even climate change. It's a climate crisis that we have now. And worst of all, biodiversity collapse. Human beings constitute 0.01% of all living things on Earth, on this planet. We have destroyed 83% of mammals and wildlife. This is how damaging human beings are. Now, my advice to the Planetary Health agenda that we are going to develop, look at it through a systems approach, not just through, the areas that you mentioned. For us, I will share with you, I work at Sunway Center for Planetary Health at Sunway University. I'm very, very, very privileged that Sunway University decided to host this center and to have this center. We are tackling it from a systems perspective, preventing the next pandemic and other infections. Also NCDs, they're all related to planetary health. If you don't have safe places to walk and it's so polluted, of course you get fat, right? Number two, we're looking at it from tackling climate change. How do we look at climate change and its impact on people from health perspectives, from crisis perspectives? Number three, how do you promote sustainable food systems? Just as we have a food security issue now, 40% of what we buy is in the landfill, and most of it is still edible. And we can feed 3 million people 3 meals a day in Malaysia with the food that is in the landfill that is still edible. Number four, we're looking at healthy cities. This is critical because 70% of the world is going to be urbanized by 2050. So I'm very happy to announce that PERA has embraced this. We are working with Ipoh to create Ipoh as a city living within the donut and embracing planetary health. Number five, communications. How many times do we talk in language that nobody understands? So my appeal to scientists, de-jargonize science. Make it appealing and understood to the public. This is how you get sustainable development goal and planetary health. Underpinning this undoubtedly is governance, good governance, leadership, everything on governance. And the last thing I will say, we need an education revolution. We need an education revolution that is embedded in planetary health. Children now can learn from the internet. They can learn knowledge from the internet. In Finland, there's not even curriculum. There's not even exams, right? What you need to do is teach them values. You need to teach them how to think, how to collaborate, how to cooperate, how to coordinate. And at Sunway, what we're doing is that it will be mandatory. We're developing the pilots now. It will be mandatory, the only university in the world that will have planetary health module as an MPU for 7 weeks for every student entering Sunway University from 2024. So if you have children, please send them to Sunway University. Because they will be leaders. They will be the managing director of PLUS. They will be heads of academic science. And they will sign on the dotted lines on all decisions that will determine the safety of human beings and the planet. So I'm going to stop here and just say that really we're here to support you, Prof. Asma, and everybody else. We want to work with the private sector, and please engage with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Tan Sri. I'm glad you have stopped. We've already gone into advertising time. All right, our third panelist also needs no introduction. She's Professor Emerita Dr. Rashida Shuib, a Fulbright Hays Scholar, graduated with his PhD from Michigan State University, USA. She's currently a professor at University of Science Malaysia's School of Health Sciences, Interdisciplinary Health Sciences Unit, USM. She served in the role of the director of the first Gender Center in Malaysia, the Center for Research on Women and Gender, in short, CANITA, at USM from 2005 to 2012. focuses on issues such as gender and development, domestic violence, marriage and migration, sexual and reproductive health and rights, microcredit and empowerment. She worked with both government and non-government organizations as a consultant and trainer on gender-related issues. Professor Rashida served on the WHO's Gender Advisory Panel in Geneva's Department Reproductive Health from the year 2001 to 2007, and also served on the IPPF's International Women's Advisory Panel in London from 95 to 99. Prof, you have the floor. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Listening to the two panelists speaking, my mind was really racing hard, and I asked Dato' Asma, why did you invite me to come to this kind of a meeting? And she said, you are under pressure, for sure. But just do it. Just share what you want to share. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. My work is in gender and health and development. I'm passionate about it. I've been doing it since 1985 or so. And I almost give up. But then I learned one thing about life, is that hope is as soft as the feather. You cannot give up. And so the fact that this gender person has been invited by ASM to come and talk is in fact a big step for me. So thank you, ASM, for at least wanting to listen to what I'm going to say. But these are the words that came to my mind. When you talk about gender, health and development, of course we need to understand what gender is all about. And too often people always mistake it to be, why is it that she bothers to talk about gender? I mean, you know, I wanted to study, for example, land ownership, men, women. And they said, what is so gender about that? Obviously the person doesn't understand. So gender talks about who we are in the society, men or women. It talks about the roles that we play. It talks about our different accessibility to resources. And I talk to the students now, it is no longer as challenging as before. And you know why? Because all I need to say is COVID-19. And they say, oh, yeah. They understand. They understand how different the impact was on women and men. And not just men and women and men, but women of different social class. The impact on me in Kelantan was so different compared to, say, the B40 in Bachok, wife of a fisherman. So they understand that. So the word gender actually is a term that talks about who we are as constructed by the society and how it intersects with ethnicity, with geographical location, with level of education, and so forth and so on. What I don't hear, and perhaps this is an opportunity given to me by Tan Sri, is that I don't hear gender being brought up as a framework by Dato' Azman Plus, and fantastic that he has rights. And of course, Tan Sri has given me the opportunity to say, definitely part of Planetary Health is the issue of gender and rights. And we have to frame it. We have to make it all part of an overall framework, an overarching framework. And if you look at, this is not new. This has been, if you read reports since 1992, for example, the one produced by Mahbul Haq, which you again cited today, in all of these reports, in all of the UN reports, in all of the CEDAW report that talks about women, all of them, even in the humanitarian report, you're very familiar how gender framework, gender lens, put on your gender lens and look and start to analyze, and you will see different information that you're going to gather and a different understanding that you will get, and you get in touch better with the lived realities of people. So to me, when you talk about planetary health, It is, of course, the rights of the earth, as you rightly say. The earth has rights. Let's begin with the lived reality. So I am going to talk based on my experience. I don't think anyone in this room ever experienced what I experienced. Growing up in a forest, hutan, clearing up the hutan, until now it's like I can drive home. No water, no electricity, no nothing, with a nice river at the back. Interacting very closely with the monkeys and the lutong and the sangkancil and whatever. I left and went to United States. And I will come back to this later, but I want to show this picture. Picture of my grandma sitting under a coconut tree, 1979. She was so happy, not because I came back, but because I asked her, what is that thing in the rice field? It was a combined harvester, the first ever to be driven in the rice field. Now, picture this. Rice field used to be very gendered jobs for men and women. Women would do certain things, men would do certain things, but both would be doing something. And both had voices, they could negotiate, they could talk about what rice I want to plant next year or next season. And the benih, the seed, was not just seed, it was a social tool. My mother would go and find Mak Leha and say, what are you planting next season? Or can we exchange a bit of what you have? So it became an important, a crucial social tool that pulled the society together. And then, of course, with all the umping and all that, that was how we sort of look at men, look at young boys, and look at young girls under the moon and all that. Well, it sounds romantic, but that was reality. It was something that bind the society. Now, so she had a voice, okay? And remember, 1970s, 1960s, many women were not as educated as now. Society and families were very patriarchal, just like still now, in some families. And she said to me, I'm happy because now I don't have to do heavy work anymore. And I thought nothing of it. I left for United States again, and I came back after that with a PhD. And by then, suddenly I saw my auntie was selling keropok or some snacks by the roadside. Why was she selling keropok? It wasn't her thing. It was never their thing in the village. Their thing was always with the rice field. What happened, do you think? The harvesting machine came. Then all the work done by women, cutting, winnowing, drying, smoke gone, all gone. At first, at least she could hang on to the gunny sack for the rice to come in to the gunny sack. And the man would carry it to the lorry. A few years later, the lorry went nearer to the rice field, no more gunny sack, and the rice fell right into the lorry. And now, and then they would take it to the rice, to Bernas to sell. Before she could still ask, how much money did we make? And then Bernas changed to fit in with the time. Bernas says, we don't give you money anymore. We put money direct into your bank account. How many women have bank account? Tell me. How many women, kampung women, have bank account? Did my mother have a bank account? Of course not. So now, she didn't even know how much money went into the bank account. No wonder my auntie was selling snacks, because she lost the control. Her voice in the management of the rice field. This is gender equality. This is about policy that only look at how much money should these families in the rural areas make, rightly so that their standard of living can go up. The government and this policy did not look or did not foresee what actually would the impact be on men and women. What am I saying? If you are talking about planetary health and a new plan of action, that plan of action must have gender lens. It must be able to predict. It must be a policy that is transformative. It's not a policy that is going to be biased on the women or the men for that matter. So the policy therefore must be developed, and the action plan must be developed based on the gender analysis. And what do I mean by gender analysis? I have been trying to convince the medical school since day one when I joined. And because my mouth was so loud, they allowed me to teach it for one module for maybe 3 hours. And then when I disappeared, the course disappeared. I fail, and that's my misgiving. My misgiving is that I fail to transform the mind of my colleagues, to integrate gender lens into the curriculum. And yet the Ministry of Health called me for the last 9 years, every year, to do a training on gender and health for the doctors. So what do you need? Once you start having this lens, what you should forge for now is collection of data, evidence, which is very, very important for planetary health action. And your data must be sex disaggregated data. Simple, I tell you. I give you a simple example. Lifespan. When we report to New York, we say, oh, Malaysians now are living up to 78 years old. Excuse me, if I were to be in the committee in New York, I would say, could you show me a sex differentiated data here about your lifespan? You break it, and then you find, oh, the women are living longer than men. Sorry. We live up to 78. The men live up to 75. And then we say, oh, isn't that good? The women are living longer. I say, yes. But are you looking at the kind of facilities you're going to have for these older women now? Who will live now? Now you listen to this. Break the data again. Not only by sex, but break it by ethnicity. And then you're going to find, my Lord, why are the Indian men dying much, much younger than the rest of the men? Now, if I were in public health, I would make sure my intervention would be a bit more targeted. And what about Chinese women? Chinese women already living over 80. So imagine the impact of aging on different sectors. Ini belum lagi kita break it into Sabah, Sarawak, rural, urban. And therefore what is going to happen is you're going to get data which are going to be very rich. It will tell you the reality. You're closer to the reality on the ground. It will help you in shaping your policy, in shaping your program, and you know exactly where the money is going to go. Now, top 5 diseases, let me tell you. Top 5 diseases for women. One of them is diabetes. Men, you don't have that in the top 5, but you do have motor vehicle accident. Too bad that one has left. I wanted to say that is your data for you. The men, top 5, they're dead because of a motor vehicle accident. Women should drive the men. That's what it says. Yeah. So the importance, therefore, what I'm trying to say here is, apart from us talking about the very big thing that we have to do, is that there are already this knowledge that we have that we could have integrated in the curriculum. It doesn't take much to integrate it into the medical curriculum. It doesn't take much for us to integrate into research, making sure, in the WHO, for example, where I was for a while in the Gender Advisory Panel, I used to look at research proposals that came in. That research proposal, if it didn't have anything, if you could not say, these are the gender data that I would be collecting, I'm sorry, it would go back to you. So you can do that with the research funding. You say, no, put it in. I want to see the development of vaccine, for example, that people are now developing. So what are the gender components that you can put in there? So then the researchers would develop this kind of sensitivity, you know, in policies, in programs, and so forth and so on. National Health Mobility Survey, for example. For years, we have been trying to tell them, please try and put in research on violence against women, because we have been hearing it for years. But no. Fortunately, this year they called me up. They said, Prof, could you help us? Because we now want to put it small, but we're going to put it in the National Health Mobility Survey, looking at intimate partner violence. But why for so long? Why would it need you so long? So there's something about resistance to this term gender, or tak faham, or just don't want to faham. I mean, I don't know, because the materials are there in the internet. Universities, some universities, Melbourne, for example, in Melbourne, Monash in Melbourne, they all have put it in their curriculum. So why is it that we do not want to do it? Okay. I want to say, the question that you asked was, what should we target? I think our hope is in the youth, in the young people. If it means changing the education, for heaven's sake, change the education. If it means we have to target them to be part of your NGO work so that they become leaders, target them to become leaders. People like me, I mean, you know, I'm facing another direction. A bit too late, I think, a bit too stubborn to change. So I think in many countries, people are now talking about young people. Okay, let me end with this. Growing up in the hutan taught me certain things. Taught me about respecting the earth. Taught me about sensing the nature. I could tell from what happened to my skin whether it was going to be a thunderstorm or not a thunderstorm. I've lost that touch now, but I could do it then. And I remember my father saying, you take care of the forest. So that's why orang kampung, orang hutan, before they cut any tree, they would say, excuse me, I need to cut you. It was that sense of respect. Now, what did Vandana Shiva say? Vandana Shiva is an ecofeminist. She said, the way we treat the forest is like an ecosystem apartheid. Very exploitative. I am the superior one. I have this, machine. I can take you down anytime. It is not, it's like gender. It's not a gender equal. It is not an equal relationship that we have with the earth, with the forest. I think we should go back to that. And the other thing is, who else should we target? I think we should target women. Not women just as consumer of plastic bag or somebody who likes to go shopping. 1970s, women were already heading the movement in India. The Chipko women are hugging trees against the big corporate that was coming in from Korea, South Korea, who paid the government million and million of Korean won. So treat women as your partners, as consumers. They're producers, they are innovators, they're not just your beneficiaries. You talk about traditional knowledge, Prof. Asma. I saw that in your slide, but I didn't see that traditional knowledge came into the last part of the slide, where now you're turning it into the policy. Now, I think we should find out what is this traditional knowledge, because I swear to God, before these women and these men die, we must go and talk to them, find out from them, how did they work on the forest? What were they thinking? What was their frame of mind? What knowledge did they have? Why were they not exploitative, for example? So I think we should go back to that. And I think this is going to be my last lah, that we must reframe our relationship with nature from now on, from an exploitative to an equal and equitable relationship. I do not know how this is going to fit in our country now that talks about economic growth and not talk about human development, which is what Human Development Report is all about. It's not just about your GDP. It's about what is the impact of that GDP really on men and women, young and old in the country. If we can do that, I think one day my grandmother, I thought I must show you this. Guess what? This was once a forest where I grew up, where I used to jump in the river. That house there, that's my house. And all the rice field there, our rice field, which we charcoal using hoe. So from a forest, think about this, we did not exploit. We worked as a team and open up this forest. But now, this rice field is being planted 3 times per year, all mechanized, even drone to fertilize. And what happened? We never knew such thing called siput gondang. Now you run the water, the million of siput gondang come out, and then you've got to go and buy pesticide. You cannot buy pesticide sold in Malaysia. Shh! Don't report this. They buy from Thailand. Not allowed in Malaysia. Why? Because that killed the siput gondang. The one that we have, don't kill the siput gondang. If you say, why don't you fry the siput gondang and sell by the roadside, like etok in Kelantan? Because it's filled with pesticide. So this is what happened. Beautiful, but all of that now are filled with pesticide and fertilizers and you name it, and no ikan haruan, no sepat, no ikan puyu, nothing there anymore, like it used to do when I was young. So please reframe, Prof. Asma. Please, Tan Sri, make gender lands and rights as the framework that we should now put it very visibly in your plan of action. And I hope that one day universities, especially Jeffrey, is he still here, will bring it back and put it into the medical curriculum. Hopefully. Yeah, once again. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Prof. So now we have to move on to our last speaker, but not the least, Mr. Jia Jo, Mr. Q Jia Jo, Sustainable Development Lawyer and the Co-Deputy of the Bar Council Environment and Climate Change Committee, advises the Malaysian Bar Council on issues pertaining to the environment and climate change, with an emphasis on promoting public engagement, climate litigation, and environmental justice. In addition, he serves as a co-chair of the Malaysian CSO's SDG Alliance, a group of civil society organizations working to advance sustainable development goals in Malaysia, as well as secretariat member of the All-Party Parliamentary Group of Malaysia on Sustainable Development Goals, a body established by Parliament to assist Malaysia in localizing sustainable development goals at the constituency level. Mr. Kia. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Dato. And there's so much that's been laid down by the panelists before. There's a lot of rich material that really I think that I fully align with, and it's particularly delightful to hear from Dato Azman from Plus Highway talking about human rights, talking about some of their gender lens that they try to incorporate. And of course, hearing Tan Sri Jamila herself speaking briefly about planetary health and the multiple dimensions that very often at national action plans and in national policies we don't hear much of, and if we do hear, we hardly translate onto the ground. And it's of course wonderful to hear real experiences and reflections from Prof. Rashida on the gender lens. I think what I want to speak about in the next 10 minutes is on how do we get better and better at incorporating diverse and different, or erstwhile different perspectives, values, interests into our policies, into our systems, and into our frameworks on which life depends on. I think this is the challenge that we have. So I'm going to touch on some of the, so if they have provided the meat, I'm going to touch on the bones in terms of the structure. And so I'll go along on the sharp questions that were posed to the panelists by Dato Baka. And I'll start really with the most crucial, the biggest challenge, the linchpin that to me, from where I am, where I'm gazing out at these challenges that we have. And I think as a practicing lawyer and someone who works on environmental justice, the first thing, if we're talking about systemic change from a legal perspective, is the absence of an express recognition of a constitutional right to a safe, clean, and healthy environment. Now, this is not to say that this right isn't a fundamental right, because this is now recognized recently in the United Nations General Assembly in July of this year, that the right to a safe, a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment is indeed a universal human right. So the position of this right has been elevated as a human right, recognized at the UNGA, voted in favor by the Malaysian government, like all civilized countries do. And we also have, in the absence of an express right, we also have Article 5, Sub 1 of our federal constitution, which says that people do have a fundamental right to life. And that means if it is a fundamental right, it means it's not granted or bestowed upon you by the government, because if it's given to you, it can be taken away. So what makes it special is the recognition that it is constitutional, it is fundamental to you inherently because you are a human being, not because you have been looked at in favor. And so why is this profoundly important is that we then move and elevate issues of social justice or environmental justice out of the sphere of discretion when we're talking about decision making into duty. That means at all levels of decision making, and I'm talking about public decision making. So at all levels of decisions, at the federal level, at the state level, at the local government level, at the agency level, when making decisions, human rights must be respected, right? So, and human rights must be protected in the role of governments, because governments have a role to protect human rights. And so elevating this into our federal constitution would be profoundly powerful in that we move from discretionary into mandatory, because human rights is basic, very basic. We're not talking about performing, we're talking about just basic, treating everyone at this basic level. That, I think, is the biggest gap from a legal systems approach. Now, in terms of some two particular priority areas that I want to emphasize in terms of moving forward planetary health in Malaysia, The first would be access to information. Data, information must be set free. The government does the work. It's called the public sector because it does it for the public. The data belongs to the public. And there is another logical reason for this, because data ought to be shared transparently as a default, as of right, because it is then for the people, for all the stakeholders, for all the colorful strands and threads in society to decide and to think and act on themselves how they wish to access, use, and translate this data. That's important so that then we have the full vibrance of society coming forward, right? And so I'm touching back onto all the differences that we talked about, whether it's indigenous perspectives, whether it's gender perspectives, etc. Right? So access to information, if you take that away, all that engagement becomes blunt, it becomes impossible, because without data, you have no building blocks for solutions. And you will not be surprised, because nothing will come forth from the ground, because people are emasculated. Right? Power is taken away when they have no access to information. I'll give you a very simple example of residents when they smell this weird chemical smoke in the evening, and then they wonder, what is this about? They organize themselves, and then they think there's this funny activity in a nearby factory, right? So what do? They go to the police, they get a run around, then finally one day they see bomba coming and visiting one of the factories. Then the residents go and ask the bomba and said, so what is going on in our neighborhood? Bomba says, I can't tell you. So this stops them from participating. This stops them from following a logical line of inquiry, stops them from participating in accountability, and they are the ones closest to the problem. They're the most motivated to solve and overcome this problem for the health of their families, and all those things. But they have been effectively told that, don't worry your little minds about this, we've got this. Stop caring, it doesn't relate to you. Now, anthropologically, and I'm reaching out of my sphere of expertise here, I think that does a lot of bad things to human behavior. When people stop feeling like they belong to society, their behaviors start to change. All right? When there is no sense of responsibility, there's no sense of neighborhood, then bad things happen. And that's the opposite of community resilience and all those good things that we learned in COVID. Yeah. So all those is missing. So access to information is a key building block to that. Second is to provide room for meaningful public participation in all public decision making. So access to information is one thing, but then also holding space and in fact facilitating meaningful public participation. Currently, the government seems to suffer public participation. It does it grudgingly, it does it full of conditions, and most of these conditions are often very tyrannical, very unreasonable, very illogical, right? But we are getting there. There are improvements here and there, but we need to move them faster. But those are the two key things that, in terms of priority, I would emphasize on. Now, of course, a lot of people are doing a lot of work in terms of trying to move the needle on these themes I've touched on. Just to highlight, I think in terms of anti-corruption, well, because we know that in the shroud of secrecy, then dereliction of duty can happen, abuse of power can happen, and then of course corrupt activities can happen. So there are people who have been working actively on strengthening our institutions, strengthening the rule of law, protecting whistleblowers, people inside systems who wish to speak out, protecting them. And of course, the other area in development that we are seeing slow but steady is business and human rights. I think from the floor, I've heard about perspectives that say that it would be unfair to only blame consumers or citizens in terms of responsibility for the climate crisis. Businesses are actually at the eye of the storm. They are at the heart of the patterns of production, and they, in so many ways, control and dictate the patterns of consumption. Right. So I think business and human rights is a very important framework that we need to have. I can't wait for the National Action Plan to really come into fruition, so that the United Nations guiding principles can be translated here onto the ground. It is good that the larger corporations, Dr. Osman has alluded to, are speaking about human rights and trying to translate them into their organizations. I look forward to an intensification of that. Business and human rights is a fundamental thing. The UNGA resolution that I spoke about, it doesn't just elevate the right to a clean environment to the status of a human right. It also had a call in resolution number 4, in that same resolution, to businesses to also respect this human right to a clean and healthy environment. The other aspect in which some progress have been made, but is still very, very important and desperately needed, is on the media, the independence of our media. We need to nurture it again, and we need to really facilitate it. So that, because here's why, we are talking about a transition of the narrative. The software in here needs a lot of patches, right? So we're not saying we want to format your brains now, you go down to 0. We're not doing that, but the transformations that we need patches that go to some of the apps, but some patches go to the operating system itself. So media plays such a powerful role in terms of carrying these narratives, which the ones that matter are very contrarian sometimes, and they create a lot of dissonance, and they are viewed upon conservatively as threats to peace and to order and to interests of shareholders. And so we need to protect these independence. So I think our approach to development by default is an exploitative one that's been very clearly articulated. And from my perspective, it was humbling for me as I get involved more and more into environmental justice, as I looked at why are these patterns of environmental injustice happening by Malaysians to Malaysians, and shockingly, I realized that we are seeing patterns of colonialism. The exploitation that happens is when a corporation, a decision maker goes into an area, and it has very little interest in having a relationship with the constituents of that area, of the surrounding area, and it makes decisions in a vacuum, right? And so this pattern of behavior demonstrates a dominion over the territories and an imperium over whoever happened to be there. This is exactly what colonialism is about, and this is what a lot of the birth of our legal system, the law was a tool for exercising order in colony. And so concepts like private titles over land was used to inventorize our natural resources, and it's been superimposed onto our adats and our very complex social systems here. And that has done a lot of violence to our society, and that violence is perpetuated today through legal systems that we are still using, and also through a lot of policies and culture. Now, I think being aware of it is very important, so that then we can then update our stories. The other thing is, I've mentioned, I think it's an identity issue. There's so many of us who are really trying to improve our lot, but the question is, what is the better life? I think we really need to have better conversations about what is the better life. I think the Life Index, we are so past the point of saying that the GDP is a really poor indicator of well-being, of dignity, and a lot of things that we hold dear, right, as people. So these are some things. And finally, I think to wrap up, as I hear the beeps, how can the role of CSO, civil society organizations, be strengthened or facilitated? I think invite CSOs as partners to the table. When making decisions, ask yourselves, those who are in power, wherever you are, whether you're in civil public service or in private sector, ask yourself who is not at the table, whose views are we not considering, because these are blind spots, and we can't afford to be blind to our blindness. I think that's an important thing. And so civil society in Malaysia, we're very blessed with a very vibrant civil society, partly also because the needs are so great and urgent. And so there's a vibrant civil society. Invite them as partners, actively involved with CSOs in decision-making processes. Actively embrace diversity. I think we must be mature and we must feel secure, or develop that sense of security that the diversity will not diminish us. The us who's in the room, who are at the table, but they would enrich us. I think that is really important as a mindset. So developing that capacity to hold space for people who are different is really key. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Q.